Okay. All right. So we are now recording, and I'm going to go ahead and let our other applicant into the meeting. Okay, and I'll get started with our script here. Okay. Welcome everybody to the May 2025 Design Review Committee meeting. Before I call the roll, I wanted to start with introductions of the Historic Preservation Program staff for those joining us tonight who have not met us before. My name is Michael Tawney. I'm the Associate Planner for the HPP, and I'm the liaison to the Historical Affairs and Landmark Review Board. And then John, would you like to introduce yourself?
Of course, my name is John McNair. I'm the Historic Preservation Specialist for the team. If your project is ultimately approved, you can expect to see me passing by your project site at some point to check up on the status and to document completion.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so now I'm going to call the roll to confirm that our DRC members are present. Omari Davis.
Here.
Great. Robert Dudka.
Here.
Alex Foster and Andy Winchell are not here yet, so we will see if they come, but if not, we've got our two members already here. All right, DRC meetings are held in person and streamed simultaneously to allow commissioners, applicants, and the public to attend online. For members of the board joining us virtually this evening, please ensure that your video is turned on and you are visible during the entire meeting, but keep your device muted until you would like to speak. For applicants and others joining us this evening, if you lose internet connectivity during the meeting, please reconnect with us via the dial-in phone option. Please keep your devices muted and your video turned off until your item is under review. When called upon to speak, you must unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on the meeting command bar at the top of the window. We do not have the ability to unmute you. If you are dialing in by phone, press *6 to unmute. The meeting chat is active for participants who need technical assistance and should not be used for questions. The public may observe the meetings, but participation in the discussion is limited to applicants and members of the HALRB during the meeting. Public comment is welcome at the HALRB meeting. Information about signing up as a speaker or submitting a public comment for that meeting is available on the HALRB website. Lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. And Andy has joined us. All right, wonderful. Okay, so we will go ahead and get started with our first agenda item, which is Walker Chapel. So Larry, you feel free to join us at the table. Here you go, Andy. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for you.
There are two items in our request. We are about to paint the entire chapel, all the way to the top of the steeple, 103 feet tall. And the entire building and the administration building and anything that's white is going to get painted. In the picture on the left-hand side, you can see part of the problem that we have. It's been at least 15 years, maybe more, since the last time the chapel was painted. And it's looking quite shabby. And on the picture on the left, you can see there's actually a piece of molding missing. That's where that black hole is.
Is that?
And it happens to be this. And you can see what we're faced with. And while this looks terrible, to us it looks wonderful because the wood itself is solid. It's just whatever the paint. There's no rot, maybe a little bit on the end, but this gave us hope that a large portion of the trim on the chapel is in fact restorable. And we don't have any big intentions of replacing, except where we find that the piece is actually rotted. We suspect that most of the rot may be in the flat boards. As you can see, the flat board there, and the gutter is right above it. And so any water coming out of the gutter would go into that little channel. It looks so pretty, but it's a water trap. And we don't know how solid that piece is. So we're asking where we do find significant rot, to prevent it from happening again, we'd like to replace those panels, those boards with PCB.
When was the chapel built?
1960.
1960. Okay.
Yeah, so it's not truly a historical building.
No, but well, by our standard,
That's historic years.
No, I was asking because of the age of the wood. Because this actually is not,
Like old wood.
it's not real old. You can see the grain here. It's actually pretty wide. So this is, and it's also very here.
Very
It's
light.
pretty light.
Yeah.
And if it was really old growth lumber, it'd be a lot heavier than that.
Yes.
And it would be, and
denser,
the grain would be a lot tighter.
The other problem you've got is you've got lead paint.
Lead paint, yeah.
And that's. major
Yeah, this is
issue.
actually the third chapel. There was a first chapel was out in the cemetery. It got torn down at the turn of the century, last century. And then the second chapel was this little outline here, and it was a wooden building, and it was torn down, and the lumber was used to build a home up on North Cleve Road.
Mhm.
And then the new chapel was built, which is all concrete, the concrete block. These are the original plans from 1959. And we actually ran a test to see if we could in fact restore some of this stuff. Let me find the page. And there is a beautiful door on the side of the chapel. It's about 11 feet tall. The door itself is 40 inches wide, and it looked like that 3 weeks ago. And today, it looks like it was just installed. Because we were able to go in, we were able to remove all of the caked paint. If there was a hole or a deviation, we were able to patch it. And there's some marvelous chemicals out there nowadays to harden wood that's gotten soft. The panels themselves are quite large compared to what you find in a normal door. And when you're inside the church and look out, you could actually see daylight through the panels. And so we were able to patch those. But that was a good experiment for us to see, could we take something that looked like that and make it look new? And I think we were able to. So
to what extent do you think there is material that needs to be replaced?
I was surprised if it's more than 5% of the whole church. But we haven't been up there yet, Yeah.
Because the reason I'm asking is because number one, we're just a advisory committee to the
Yes, I know.
to the full board, and decisions like this, I think, would have to be made by the full board. It's not, and because I think the guidelines are pretty clear that it would have to be replaced with wood, right?
So
Unless it's in really damp areas. I don't know what the guidelines for this specific
I'm
historic
happy
district
to
is.
talk about that. So
Yeah.
Walker Chapel does not have its own design guidelines like Maywood does. So we use the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation to offer some guidance. So I think I think from staff's perspective, it definitely would need a COA, would need to go to the full board regardless. But I have some concerns about the use of a modern material to patch instead of using wood. I know wood today is not necessarily the same quality that we would want from an older piece, but I think that on the steeple and on the portico on the front, those are really character defining features. And so I think using wood would be our preference there. But in the areas where, like in the soffit right there and like on the fascia where there's a lot of rot and that there seems to be the future of it being rotted again is kind of high because it's right next to a gutter. I think that there's something to be said for those being less character defining features, and potentially using PVC instead because it would probably last a bit longer in terms of its moisture exposure than modern wood, but wood. So that's kind of staff's perspective.
But the guidelines the Secretary of the Interior guidelines call for a replacement with wood.
It says where possible, use like materials.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that gives you a little wiggle room
It
then.
does give you a little bit of wiggle room.
But the other question is, because I don't know, I'm not totally up on what you can do with PVC these days, but can they match this profile in PVC? Because I'm not sure that I've ever seen anybody match PVC to complicated profiles like this.
It might have to be a compound of two pieces to make it. We do have,
It would have to be exactly the same profile.
yeah, we have all of the profiles.
Right.
So we know every place in the church we're molding.
Right. People can cut lumber companies like Smoots and they can cut knives that will be exactly.
Yes, yes,
The-
yeah.
Smoots.
Yeah,
They don't do that anymore? They don't do that anymore?
No, they,
You gotta get your own knives?
And they have a lumber table.
no, they don't. They're still in the lumber business, but they're
I haven't
not
used them in a while.
It's been taken over by several different people.
Well, anyway, there are companies that do this. I mean, it's not a big deal.
But it's difficult. It is difficult to get that. There's a mill in Richmond that has got old growth red pine from the south. That was the first cutover. All the stuff after
Right.
the Civil War, they cut all the best trees in south down and shipped them north to mills for mill construction. This place has got an incredible warehouse of stuff that they've just taken.
Which place is this?
I can't think of the name of it now. I've used them for
Yeah.
The
making
steeple.
flooring.
Yeah, I'm
No,
running to the same place I got my stuff from, but anyway, there are people that can match this exactly. It's not really an issue. I mean, it's
I
done all
can
the
map
time.
it in my workshop too.
You-
Hang router cable on all the different heads and cut anything and make all my picture frames.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, anyways, because I think that the first requirement is
They're
that
quite busy.
yeah, the first requirement is that the moldings will have to match. So,
Yes, yes.
and then the second issue then is the one of the material.
Yeah.
And whether, and that has two parts. I think Michael kind of put it pretty well, that in places where it's really, character defining, like in the cornices and things like that. And also places, it's very clear, even in other guidelines that we use in other historic districts in Arlington. The rule that we've been following is that in cases like that, you have to do it in wood. In places where it's subject to a lot of damp conditions, and it's not as relevant. I mean, then that might be we might be okay with PVC. So
Yeah, I suspect that the rot is where it's most damp. It's
Right.
where the
Well, yeah,
currents
usually
are
that's-
going and things
that's
like
usually,
that.
and then a third consideration is how visible it is, because if it's
Yes.
relatively flat pieces and it's way up in the air and it's painted, I don't know that anybody's going to really know
Yeah.
what it is. But that's not really our call in this committee, so it'll have to be the full board. So the other question I have for you is, when will you know the extent of how much, is somebody going to do an assessment before you?
The way the contract is, they're gonna go up and they're going to scrape.
Just stop.
power wash and do everything to get the church as clean as they possibly can and get all the loose paint off the church. And they're gonna mark all the places that need carpentry work.
Okay.
And so it'll be a one-time report, go around, okay, that spot there needs replacement. Do we do it in PCB? Do we do it in wood?
Right. But what we, Michael, what we could do at the full board meeting is essentially write a motion that essentially kind of creates the conditions and then leaves it up to staff to so that you don't have to come back to the full board or this committee. You'll just deal with staff. We can basically just delegate the responsibility
Because
to staff to do that.
we have some timelines that are beyond our
Yeah,
control.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to have to wait a month to find out whether you can or can't do it. So I think that's probably the way to handle it.
I think that's perfectly fine. I think as long as the rest of the board feels comfortable with that. I did want to see, Omari, do you have any questions about this portion of the project? Because we have one other portion about the project that we have to discuss still.
Sure thing. Nothing about this. I think this discussion has been good and sort of edifying for me as well as to hear sort of more about the history of the trim and different ways to get the trim right. But I think what Robert put out makes a lot of sense. So I think sort of giving those sort of, I think it makes sense to sort of give those sort of those guidelines, and then maybe that'll be a good starting point for this discussion during the full board meeting.
Okay, so then just to clarify for this portion before we move on to the door question, it sounds like you all are comfortable with the use of PVC in areas where it isn't highly visible and where
But it's subject to damp conditions,
Right.
to rock.
only to subject to damp conditions,
Yeah.
and everywhere else it should be wood.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's not, that's just a question of keeping it painted, which I'm sure you're gonna be doing. So,
Yeah,
Yeah, I still have a real concern with the whole lead paint issue, because it's obvious that you've got an incredible amount of, that's typical of lead paint. And, are the people that are cleaning it aware of that, and are they going to
Yes,
take
they are
that
very much aware.
precaution?
and we are too, and that's why the project is scheduled to start no earlier than the 15th of June, because that's when the preschool is out. The children are out there
yeah,
during the summer. And so that's one of our time frame. We have to be done by about the 15th of August because the children will be coming back. And the second constraint we have is the steeple is an AT&T cell phone tower.
Inside, not on the exterior.
And those crosses on the outside that you see, those are actually fiberglass panels. And behind each one of them is a 6-foot antenna.
Yeah.
It radiates out 8 to 12 feet. And if you get anywhere near it, you can have strange looking children.
so they have
They're
to
gonna-
shut it down.
They're gonna replace all of their equipment this summer. So I
Okay.
was trying to time it so that
Right,
the week that they replace the equipment is the week we came to steeple.
right.
So we think we're gonna have a week, maybe at the most 2 weeks. to
Right.
actually do
Well,
the
that's
steeple.
why it's important to delegate the responsibility to.
I think so.
Do it on a piece by piece basis to
Well,
staff.
you know what? I'm not sure. I would go further. Given the age of the building, it's definitely a historic building, but it's not like it was an early 1900s
Right.
building or a 19th century building. This is a more modern thing, and I think, given the fact that I think you're going to find an awful lot of that is going to be deteriorated and it needs to be replaced. So, I mean, I think a more realistic thing is, instead of having to do this again in a number of years, because you're going to have a hard time getting any wood that's going to last that long. We just don't have the wood available. I think the direction should be to replace it with PVC
Wherever needed.
wherever needed, because I think you're just going to end up making a problem all over again. It's going to be down the road, and it's going to be fairly.
Church seems to have the habit of waiting until it really looks bad before they do anything.
Right.
Well, like everything, it's PVC is not cheap.
No.
Because I've actually priced some of this for some stuff. There are materials. I'm actually replacing some stuff on a terrace that I have, and I'm using mahogany to do it. And mahogany's actually surprisingly affordable. It's not as expensive as it used to be, and mahogany will last forever if you keep it painted. I mean, so that's always a possibility. But I think this is something the full board needs to discuss. So
Yeah, I mean, it even sounds a little bit like there's some split here about how to address it. So I think
I'm worried mostly about precedent, because then if you start saying, you can use PVC, then the next guys can come and say, I want to use PVC. And then the next guy's going to say, well, I'm doing it all in PVC. And then we no longer have guidelines. So that's, I think, the main thing that I'd be concerned about.
Well, let's move on to the door question for this one, because it sounds like regardless, it's going to come to the HOA and it'll be on the discussion agenda, so it can be discussed by everybody in that specific motion made. But let's talk about the door, just so that I have a sense of what you all are thinking and what I can write in my staff report. So, do you want to talk about the door, Larry?
Sure. The door is, if you look at those stairs, the door is on the right-hand side and the main office entrance is on the left-hand side. And you can see the main office entrance is a steel door. It doesn't look like the wooden door that's across from it. And our proposal is to replace the wooden door with a steel door that looks like the main entrance, so we get some, compatibility there. And also the wooden door that's there, the bottom of it is rotted out. And it's very difficult to open. You really have to push it to get it to open, because it has a pivot at the bottom and side hinges. It's not like steel doors that we put in before with our ball bearing hinges, And
Where are these doors?
It's on a side elevation, so you can kind of
see it up in
the steps going up the
South
ramp,
image.
it's pointing on the right hand side. Yeah, and in the circle.
It's around back, kind of in a like a little alcove. It's not, you can't really see the doors that well from the street.
No, you can't see it from the street.
But the issue, I think, is steel doors look like steel doors.
Yeah.
It's virtually impossible to get a steel door that looks like a real wood door. And
Right.
I think that is something that people if they go in and out, that's an important thing. I think that should be wood. And I think you should replace the steel door with wood door and replace the wood door with another one.
Larry, do you know when that door was put in?
Oh, that's the original door.
The steel door?
Oh, the steel door? I have no idea when
Okay.
that building was built 5 years before the other church. And it may have had a steel door to start with.
Right. Yeah, well, it would probably be somewhere in the drawings, but
The building even has vinyl windows. So it's not.
yeah, this is one of these buildings that, like you were saying, Annie, it's not from 1910. It's
Right.
And so, but again, I think this would have to be the full board would have to decide. I mean, I'm sort of agnostic about it. I mean,
Okay.
I don't feel as strongly as you do about the wood here,
Yeah,
but I think I would prefer it in wood, absolutely. But
And is there a reason why you don't want to put it in wood? Is it just a difficulty finding like a model that matches? Is it more of a
Like you say, I don't know if I can find a wood door that looks like the metal door. And I'd like to have both doors look the same.
Okay.
And it is a fire exit. And if the sanctuary ever caught on fire, we'd be hard pressed for some of our congregation to open that door.
Well, no, you obviously need to replace it, but there are, again, like with the wood, there are door manufacturers that will make wood doors that will pretty much last forever. It's just a question of what species of wood you use. Because they can use old growth. There is still old growth lumber available, or Douglas fir, or things like that from the Pacific Northwest. And so you can have doors that will last forever built out of wood. I mean, a lot of this comes down to cost. I mean,
Yes, exactly.
that's really what
We are a church.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's something that needs to be balanced against, the age of the building, the location, like how well you can see it, all of those things.
I will say that HLRB is historically not allowed to use cost as a reasoning for why we make a decision on things, even though it is a very realistic part of projects, but I just want to put that out there. Omari, do you have any thoughts, any kind of concerns about the door that you would like to share?
Yeah, a question, I guess. Will the transom also be replaced, or will the transom remain in
The
place?
transom we will keep the transom.
Okay. And the transom, I'm assuming, is wood as well, or do you know?
It is wood also, but it matches the transom on the office door. And from a design viewpoint, we really like both doors look the same.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. I'm at this point. I'm sort of torn maybe on this one a little bit, and I'll wait for the full board discussion to maybe have a better position on it. But I think it would be preferable for it to be wood. But as far as like more final decision, I'm not really sure right now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, it sounds like this is going to go on the discussion agenda. And I think at the meeting we'll have either Robert, would you like to give the report out for DRC
Sure.
at the meeting? Okay. All right. All right, Larry, thank you for joining us today. I will send you an email. I'm actually going to be out of town starting this weekend, but I will send you all the information you need to your network.
Okay. And if you think I should have other materials or something,
Sure.
Let me know.
I will email you tomorrow. We can definitely talk about it a little bit more.
And we'll try to paint this before the next meeting.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Larry. Really
Thanks.
appreciate it. All right. Got you in there with all the chairs. All right, let's move on to our second item, which is in Maywood. And I believe that our applicant is here. Thank you for joining us tonight. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, Aruna. I live at 2332 North Fillmore Street. Yeah, we have this garage door that's rotting and not really working anymore, and so we wanted to replace it.
Yeah. So I'll scroll through to show you all, but the garage it's attached. The house is built in 1950. It's non-contributing to Maywood. The design guidelines do not treat non-contributing and contributing houses differently. So the same standard applies for all houses in Maywood. Just as a reminder. So this is the facade, is the front elevation. Here's a close-up of the side entrance, and here is a close-up of the front. Now, this door is wood. I could not definitively find if the door is, original. It's certainly older, and in photographs of the house, it goes all the way back to the early 2000s. So it has been there for a while. But Arunya is applying to replace it with a steel garage door and then a steel side entrance door. In Maywood, it is the preference to use wood doors for detached garages and then just for houses in general. The design guidelines do not stipulate that it has to be wood, but they just basically say that if there's a different design or different material, it needs a COA. I have some examples of other projects, but I just want to see initial thoughts, reactions to the proposal.
Excellent. Well, I think, first of all, it's a mistake to say that non-contributing structures and contributing structures are the same in terms of what you require for materials. I think that was never the intention. I have worked with a number of the people that originally wrote the standards, and the split was that you would not make the non-contributing structures to make this an historic district. You would give them a break, if you will, and not try to enforce everything about wood versus steel or whatever. And I think that's really should take a look at that differentiation, because to make someone comply with non-contributing structure to the same standards of the reason the district was set up in the first place, those homes from the 1920s, it's just not fair, and I don't think it was the original intention of the guidelines from the people I've talked to. So that's just it. I don't see any reason why they couldn't use the steel doors on this structure. If it's a non-contributing structure.
Okay.
It looks, reasonably compatible. It's not. I just don't think this is an inappropriate request.
Can we see the garage door again?
Sure. This one?
No,
Oh,
the steel.
Yeah. And let me see if I can zoom in a little bit for you.
I tried to get it to sort of look somewhat comparable. I mean, it has a different color on that image. I'm not wedded to the color. I think that's just what I had put up.
Well, I'm a little bit torn because I think that if this house is from the 50s, although it's non-conforming, it's still historic. It's pretty old relative. It's only 30 years different than, or 20 years than many of the historic houses in Maywood. So my inclination is to require that it be in wood. But the question I have is, have you talked to a good painter about restoring the garage door and the other door? I mean, I can't. It's hard to see, but it doesn't look like there's that.
No, I mean, it's all warped, and I mean, the whole garage door structure is like from the 70s, and it's like some Sears mechanism, and the whole thing needs to just be replaced.
So the garage door is from the 70s.
I don't know when it's from. We purchased the house in 2017, and I don't know like when what was done, but the internal mechanism just looks very old and is not a current mechanism.
The hardware on the outside, I actually know because my parents' house has that same hardware, and their door was put in 1959. So
so it could be like from then. I don't really know.
So the question, the reason I'm asking is that it would be cheaper if a painter could just do a good, make sure, basically clean everything up and solidify anything that needs, there's ways today, like basically they can use wood hardener and Bondo, and they can make it look like new, just like the last applicant was talking about. And it might be cheaper to do that than to put a new door, new doors in. because my inclination is that it should be wood. Just because I think we've required a lot of other applicants to do that. And I think once, you know, it's again, it's one of the slippery slopes. If we allow steel doors, then the next person's going to want a steel door, only it may not be, you know, it may not be, you know, it may not, like right now, this is a really nice design with all the squares. And then, you know, it fits the house really beautifully. And then, you know, the next person then comes in but they want something that's just a generic steel door. And they say, well, you let the other person do a steel door. So again, it's a precedent issue for me. I think I'm inclined to ask that it be wood. But having said that, I think I'm looking, looks like there's a little bit of problems on the bottom rail of the garage door, but otherwise, you know, and again, this is just photographs.
Doesn't look too bad.
It doesn't look too bad from here. And my inclination would be to ask a painter to see if they can do a good job with these doors, because you may not need to replace them at all. I mean, it's because those are older doors. I guess I know a lot of newer garage doors, like the one I have on my house, is the panels are masonite, you know, and once the water gets in there, that's shot. But if the panels are wood like that, you can see a little, you know, it depends on the exact construction of the door, but in a lot of cases, the painters could, like the last applicant was saying, they can make it look like it's brand new. So that would be my inclination.
That door doesn't close and doesn't like close. It's like, you'll see on the bottom, it's all like warped and it doesn't open and close properly.
The side door.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that can be fixed too, but if you determine that you want to replace it, then I think, you know, since it's a material change, we'd have to discuss it before the full board anyway. I don't think we can put this on consent to go, because the board's never done that.
Omari, can we hear what you think about it?
Yeah, sure thing. I think I guess I'll since we're kind of maybe a little split on sort of the steel versus the wood. I want to speak to precedent a little bit. I feel like we've done a couple doors sort of in the sort of recent past where we sort of said, you know, this door is wood and it's in like a more of a damp area, so we'll go ahead and, you know, let it be a material that can withstand moisture a little bit better. So I just, from a precedent standpoint, I mean, I'm not sure if this door here is necessarily in a quote unquote wet location, but just kind of speaking from precedent that will probably come up, I feel like we've sort of maybe crossed some Rubicon on that already. I'm just kind of wanted to kind of put that out there. I mean, I think in general, I would prefer the wood, but I guess I don't really have a. I guess again, we're kind of. I feel like we're kind of split tonight anyway, so I don't necessarily want to put a vote either way in there.
Keep it that way.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and you know, in just doing a little bit of looking at other COA projects, the majority of the time it has been a requirement to have a wood door. There was a project on Edgewood for another non-contributing house. You all might remember, it was a side addition. They were building a attached garage as part of the side addition. Originally, the applicant had proposed they wanted to use a fiberglass door. The HOA said no, and they had to come back with a wood door. On the other hand, we did find another house that's non-contributing that has a garage that looks very similar to this one, and it does not have a wood door. It has some kind of composite material door. So I think it just sounds like it's going to have to come to discussion, to the discussion agenda at the HALRB. Does everybody agree with that?
No.
Well, yeah,
I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
To replace the internal mechanism, and I don't know that I can hire somebody to replace the inside thing and put it back on this door. Like, I think I need to buy the whole system at a Home Depot.
Okay, I gotcha, because
I asked them if they had a wood garage door and they said no. So this is my option. Like, the internal mechanism is just on its last legs, and you know, it doesn't even like raise up if somebody's going under it, and it's just a very outdated mechanism.
okay. Well, based off the discussion tonight, your project will still come forward to the full board for discussion, and then it'll be at that meeting that they will decide whether or not steel doors for the replacement are allowable. You will absolutely be able to talk at that meeting. I will send you all the details for it tomorrow, and be able to share kind of your perspective and why you're making this request. And can talk to the board a bit more about that.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. And I'll make sure to touch base with you tomorrow to share all those details, and we can talk about it and answer any questions that you have. Okay.
Okay.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay. The last item we have is Buckingham. And I believe we've got Anne here who is representing this project. Anne, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you for joining us. I will flip through your proposal and just explain it and see if we get any questions or concerns about the project. So this is in Buckingham. It's for a new business that is going into the commercial section of the district. And they are proposing to install two signs. One, because it's one of the corner stores. So one sign is going to be on the front, and then the other sign is going to be on the side, which you can see over here. The side sign, wrong mouse. The side sign has a burger design because it's going to be a burger restaurant.
Cool.
Correct me if I'm wrong on that, Anne, but I'm pretty sure that it's going to be a burger restaurant.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for confirming. So all of the measurements and everything comply with the Buckingham design guidelines. The only difference is the depth. The design guidelines actually say it has to be 4 inches off of the facade. However, all of the recently approved sign designs in Buckingham have ranged between 5 to 7 inches in depth. So that has kind of become the new standard in Buckingham. And there hasn't been any issue with it in the past. But yeah, they'll be match exactly the length of the awning, and everything else is complies with the design guidelines. And it is, oh, I gotta do it on here, too many screens. It's certainly better than what is there currently, which is for an old Boost Mobile that hasn't been in there for some time. And there was a non-compliant change with the sign when they changed the name to ST Mobile or Street Mobile, and they decided to try to rub out so anyways, yeah, Anne, is there anything I missed or that you would like to add, or anything that you would like to say?
Well, the sign is in keeping with all of the other signs that are in the strip mall and the one that is across the street. So it matches what's already there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, so then is it safe to say that this will go on the consent agenda for the HALRB?
Yeah.
You agree with that, Omari?
Sounds good to me.
All
Yes,
right.
I do. Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, so Anne, I will send you an email tomorrow morning. Basically, being on the consent agenda means that your project will get voted and blocked at the beginning of the meeting by the HALRB, but I will send you all of those details. It won't be discussed and have like a full presentation. It'll just be voted at the beginning. So I'll send you all of those details in an email tomorrow. But while you're here, do you have any questions for us?
No, when is that meeting though?
Yep, it is May 21st. So it's on a Wednesday.
May 21st.
Yep, at 6:30.
Okay.
I can send you all of that information in my email tomorrow as well.
Well, and I would add that
Okay.
what we've done in the past, I would be really surprised if this doesn't pass. I mean, I'm sure it will. So I'm not sure that they need to even be there at the meeting. In the past, staff has represented them if there's been a question. But I think it's, anyway, In any case, it'll be real quick.
It will be really quick.
You'll need like 10 minutes of your time.
Yeah, and we have started to
Okay.
that everybody attends, just to be safe.
Okay.
But
That's fine.
yeah, so I will follow up with all that information, but yeah, the meeting is on May 21st.
Okay, very good.
Wonderful. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, and that
That's that.
is the end of our meeting, everybody. So I will stop recording.